Dear all, in this video we'll see about disaster management. Let's start from Unit 1. Disaster is a sudden calamitous event bringing great damage, loss, destruction and devastation to life and property. The combination of hazards, vulnerability and inability to reduce the potential negative consequences of risk results in disaster. Hazards are defined as a threat to people, structures, or economic assets and which may cause a disaster. Typical examples for hazards can be absence of rain which leads to drought or the abundance of rain which leads to floods. Natural hazards. These are naturally occurring physical phenomena caused either by rapid or slow events, which can be geophysical, hydrological, climatological, meteorological, and biological. Man made hazards. Technological or man made hazards are events that are caused by humans and occur in or close to human settlements. This can include environmental degradation, pollution, and accidents. Vulnerability. It is the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed. Disaster resilience is the capacity to prevent, mitigate, prepare for, respond to, and recover from the impacts of disasters. Vulnerability and disaster resilience are closely related, but there is a subtle difference between these two terms. Vulnerability is defined as a risk factor, whereas the disaster resilience is defined as the capacity to respond. According to DFID, a framework is given as follows. Framework involves four main elements. First one, context of a particular group of people or an individual and the possibility of disturbances occur. Then third one, their capacity to deal with the disturbances. And the fourth element, their reaction to the disturbances occurred. Resilience in the international context. It is given by Hayago Framework for Action. Building the resilience of nations and communities to disaster is the accepted framework for making the world safer from natural disasters and building disaster resilience. It is adopted in early 2005 and shortly after the Indian Ocean tsunami. This framework sets out a 10-year plan for the substantial reduction of disaster losses in lives and in the social, economic, and environmental assets of communities and countries. It has been accepted by 128 member states of the United Nations. The main priorities it sets are to identify, assess, and monitor disaster risk and enhance early warning systems. To use knowledge, innovation, and education to build a culture of safety and resilience at all levels. Finally, to reduce the underlying risk factors. Then, World Bank. It is a global facility for disaster reduction and recovery. The World Bank has been involved in post disaster recovery and reconstruction for more than 25 years. Natural disaster assistance amounted to 35 billion US dollar and 9% of total World Bank commitments. This share has been increasing steadily over the years. In response, the World Bank established disaster risk management teams throughout the geographical regions which aim to reduce human suffering and economic losses caused by natural disasters. The World Bank created Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery, that is GFDRR, in 2006. The aim of GFDRR is to help countries reduce their vulnerability to natural disasters and to adapt to climate changes. The National Strategy for Disaster Resilience. National strategy reflects the priorities of the Hyogo framework and provides for a whole of nation resilience based approach to disaster management. The national strategy focuses on leading change and coordinating effort, understanding risk and reducing them in the built environment, communicating with and educating people about risk, building effective partnerships, empowering individuals, and supporting the development of disaster resilience capabilities. Now let's see the resilience activities made in Queensland. The Queensland government has comprehensive disaster management arrangements including a legislative framework, a team which designs a set of their own rules, governance structures, coordination mechanisms, planning processes and financial instruments. Resilience is an integral aspect of these arrangements. This is according to the Act of Disaster Management 2003. Building disaster resilience is an important feature of all these arrangements, and the plan explicitly supports the principles outlined in the National Strategy for Disaster Resilience. Then next one, Department of Community Safety. The action plan for disaster resilience developed by DCS highlights the importance of building a more disaster resilient community. This program includes natural disaster resilience program, emergency management and local government. Let's see one by one. Natural disaster resilience program. Natural disaster resilience, it aims at reducing vulnerability to natural disasters by supporting local governments and other stakeholders to build community resilience. Cassowary Coast Disaster Management Community Resilience and Education Program. It is an ongoing disaster management public education and training program for local and regionally based schools, businesses, community groups, service clubs, emergency services, volunteers, and neighboring councils. Then, National Disability Services. It is improving disaster readiness, response, and recovery by strengthening support networks and engagement of people with a disability, their families, and their neighbors. Then, volunteering youth communication and resilience projects. It aims to educate youth regarding disaster resilience by connecting with them using an application software like an app. Next one, climate. It is working towards a greener strategy. This strategy outlines the next steps in tackling climate change challenges. Then, disaster preparedness in vulnerable communities. It helps to assist vulnerable communities within adapt to the effects of climate change by increasing the ability of local governments, businesses, households, families, and individuals to become more resilient and self reliant. And we should keep our climate safe. And we should support our heroes by strengthening the capability of state emergency service and rural fire service by providing additional equipment and resources. And we have to support the existing volunteers and attracting new volunteers also. Bushfire Community Training Package. It is developing and supporting a network of volunteer community educators to deliver bushfire education and natural disaster community safety messages to their local communities. And finally, disaster management warehouses and caches. To ensure rapid and reliable deployment of high volumes of essential supplies to local communities to assist in response or recovery situations. Emergency Management is an operational division of DCS. It works with its partners to develop, maintain, and continually improve disaster management arrangements. Then, local government. Local government is central to disaster management arrangements. According to the Disaster Management Act 2003, it sets out responsibilities for the establishment and support of local disaster management groups to plan for and prepare the local system and community for disaster events. Councils also develop and maintain a capacity to respond to and recover from disasters. Risk. It is a measure of the expected losses due to a hazardous event of a particular magnitude occurring in a given area over a specific time period. Risk is a function of the probability of particular occurrences and the losses each would cause. The level of risk depends on the following factors: nature of the hazard, vulnerability of the elements, and economic value of those elements. Thank you all.